Picture this moment. You've likely experienced it without fully recognizing its significance. You quote standing by a window, glancing at your watch for what feels like the 100th time. Maybe you're sitting at a cafe, stirring your coffee absently, or pacing near the entrance of a restaurant. The person you're meeting is nowhere to be seen, and that familiar thought creeps into your mind. They're running behind again. Perhaps you sigh, check your phone once more, or feel that subtle tightening in your chest. The mixture of irritation and resignation that comes with waiting. Or maybe you're on the other side of this scenario, rushing through traffic, mentally rehearsing another apology, promising yourself that next time will be different. This dance with time, this perpetual struggle between intention and reality, reveals something profound about human psychology that goes far beyond simple time management. What most people fail to understand is that chronic lateness isn't really about time at all. It's about the complex emotional landscape that exists within every human being, the landscape filled with invisible pressures, unspoken fears, and deeply ingrained patterns that have nothing to do with clocks or calendars. When someone consistently arrives late, they're not making a statement about respect or responsibility. They're revealing something much more intimate. How they process stress, handle transitions, manage expectations, and navigate the emotional weight of daily life. Consider the morning routine of someone who's perpetually late. They wake up with genuine intentions to be punctual. Their alarm goes off, and they tell themselves, today will be different. But then something happens, not a dramatic event, but a series of micro moments that cascade into delay. They spend an extra minute checking their reflection, adjusting something that feels slightly off. They remember an email that will only take a second to respond to. They second-guess their outfit choice and make a quick change. Each decision feels reasonable in isolation, but together they create a familiar pattern of running behind. This isn't carelessness, it's the manifestation of an internal world that operates on emotional time rather than mechanical time. One of the most fascinating aspects of chronic lateness is rooted in what psychologists call planning fallacy, the tendency to underestimate the time needed for future tasks while accurately estimating time for similar past tasks. But for habitually late individuals, this goes deeper than simple miscalculation. They live in a state of perpetual optimism about time. Every morning they believe that today will be the day when everything flows smoothly, traffic will be light, they'll remember everything they need, no unexpected interruptions will arise, and they'll glide seamlessly from task to task. This optimism is both their strength and their downfall. It keeps them hopeful and positive, but it also keeps them trapped in unrealistic expectations about how much they can accomplish in any given time frame. Imagine someone getting ready for an important meeting. They know it typically takes 20 minutes to drive to their destination, but they leave with exactly 20 minutes to spare. In their mind, this is sufficient because they're envisioning the perfect scenario: green lights, no construction, a parking spot right in front of the building. When reality introduces its usual complications, a delayed train, a phone call that runs long, or simply the need to stop for gas, they find themselves running late once again. The optimism that makes them pleasant to be around in many situations becomes the very thing that sabotages their punctuality. For many chronically late individuals, the real struggle lies in emotional transitions. Moving from one activity to another requires a type of mental energy that varies dramatically from person to person. Some people can shift gears effortlessly, while others need time to emotionally process the change. When someone is deeply engaged in an activity they enjoy, pulling away feels jarring. When they're procrastinating on something they're dreading, beginning feels overwhelming. These emotional transitions create invisible delays that don't show up on any schedule but profoundly impact timing. Think about someone who's working from home and needs to leave for an appointment. They're absorbed in a project, feeling productive and focused. The time to leave arrives, but emotionally, they're not ready to disconnect. They tell themselves, just 5 more minutes to finish this thought, and those 5 minutes stretch into 15. This isn't time blindness in the traditional sense. They're aware of the clock. It's emotional resistance to transition, a psychological friction that makes shifting from one mode of being to another feel more difficult than it appears from the outside. Contrary to what many people assume, chronic lateness often stems from perfectionism rather than carelessness. Many habitually late individuals are trying to do everything exactly right, which creates delays they don't anticipate. They spend extra time preparing because they want to arrive looking polished and professional. They double-check emails before sending them, review documents one more time, or adjust details that others might overlook. Their intention is to show respect through preparation, but the execution creates the opposite impression. This perfectionist tendency extends to their departure process. Instead of leaving with a realistic buffer for unexpected delays, they try to time everything perfectly, leaving with just enough time under ideal circumstances. When those circumstances inevitably prove less than ideal, lateness becomes unavoidable. Another psychological layer involves emotional avoidance. Some people are late because, on a subconscious level, they're avoiding the emotional weight of what they're walking into. This isn't conscious procrastination, it's a subtle form of emotional self-protection. If a meeting feels stressful, they might move more slowly while getting ready. If a social gathering makes them anxious, they might find reasons to delay their departure. If a task feels overwhelming, they might buffer their approach with extra time spent on less important activities. This avoidance isn't rational or deliberate, it's their nervous system's way of creating a small buffer between their current state and whatever emotional challenge awaits them. The lateness becomes an unconscious coping mechanism, a way of managing anxiety or discomfort. Many patterns of chronic lateness trace back to early life experiences. Some people grew up in households where time was fluid and schedules were suggestions rather than requirements. For them, the rigid structure of adult scheduling feels foreign and constraining. Others experience the opposite, overly structured childhoods where every minute was monitored and controlled. As adults, they may unconsciously rebel against tight schedules by claiming small pockets of autonomy through lateness. These early experiences create internal blueprints for how time should feel. Someone who learned that rushing creates anxiety may naturally slow down when faced with time pressure, even when that slowdown makes them late. Someone who associates punctuality with control may resist being on time as a way of maintaining emotional independence. Many chronically late individuals have minds that work differently when it comes to attention and focus. They might become so absorbed in what they're doing that time genuinely disappears. This isn't an excuse, it's a neurological reality for people whose brains prioritize depth of engagement over time awareness. These individuals often excel in careers requiring deep focus and creativity, but struggle with the time management aspects of daily life. Their strength becomes their challenge when it comes to punctuality. They might spend an hour perfecting a presentation that others would complete in 30 minutes, not because they work slowly, but because they see possibilities for improvement that others miss. Their attention to detail and creative engagement makes them valuable colleagues and friends, but also makes them frequently late. For many habitually late people, lateness is a symptom of emotional and cognitive overwhelm. They're carrying too many responsibilities, managing too many details, and trying to be too many things to too many people. When someone's mental bandwidth is constantly maxed out, time management becomes one of the first casualties. They're not intentionally disorganized, they're operating at capacity, and something has to give. Unfortunately, punctuality often becomes that something. Their lateness isn't a reflection of their priorities or values. It's a reflection of a system operating beyond its sustainable limits. They care deeply about being reliable, which is often why they've taken on so much in the first place. But the very caring that makes them valuable also makes them overcommitted. Some chronic lateness stems from issues with self-worth and time estimation. People who don't value themselves highly may unconsciously underestimate how long their tasks will take because they underestimate their own worth and the importance of their contributions. They think, I can get ready quickly, when what they really mean is I don't deserve to take as much time as I actually need. This creates a cycle where they consistently underestimate their needs, run late, feel guilty, and further diminish their sense of self-worth. Breaking this cycle requires not just better time management, but a fundamental shift in how they view themselves and their right to take up space and time in the world. For chronically late individuals, time often feels like something that happens to them rather than something they can control. They experience time as elastic and emotional rather than fixed and mechanical. When they're happy, time flies. When they're anxious, it crawls. When they're absorbed, it disappears. This subjective experience of time makes it difficult to develop the objective relationship with clocks and schedules that punctual people take for granted. They're not ignoring time, they're experiencing it differently. Their internal clock runs on emotional rhythms rather than mechanical ones, and this creates a constant disconnect between their inner experience and external expectations. Despite common assumptions, being chronically late is rarely comfortable or convenient for the late person themselves. Most habitually late individuals carry significant emotional weight about their tardiness. they feel guilty, embarrassed, and frustrated with themselves. They see the impact their lateness has on others, and it genuinely bothers them. They make sincere promises to do better, and they mean those promises in the moment. The gap between their intentions and their actions creates internal conflict that most people never see. This emotional burden often makes their lateness worse, not better. The stress of knowing they have a reputation for being late can create anxiety that actually slows them down further. They might spend extra time getting ready because they're worried about what people will think, which ensures they'll be late once again. There's often a connection between creative thinking and chronic lateness. People who see the world in terms of possibilities rather than limitations may struggle with the finite nature of time. Their minds are constantly generating new ideas, noticing details others miss, and seeing potential improvements or changes. This creative orientation is valuable in many contexts, but it can be challenging when it comes to time management. They might start getting ready to leave and notice something that could be improved, fixed, or enhanced. To them, this feels like responsible attention to detail. To others, it looks like poor time management. Their lateness isn't a lack of respect for time. It's a different relationship with priorities and possibilities. They value excellence and creativity, sometimes at the expense of punctuality. The key to understanding chronic lateness lies in recognizing it as a complex psychological phenomenon rather than a simple character flaw. Most habitually late people aren't choosing to be inconsiderate. They're struggling with internal dynamics that make punctuality genuinely difficult. This doesn't excuse the impact of lateness on others, but it does provide a framework for understanding and addressing the behavior more effectively. Instead of asking, "Why can't you just be on time?" the more helpful question becomes, "What makes timing so challenging for you?" Change becomes possible when chronically late individuals understand their own patterns. They need to identify what triggers their delays, what makes transitions difficult, and what emotional factors contribute to their time miscalculations. For some, this means building in extra buffer time and accepting that they need more transition time than others. For others, it means addressing underlying perfectionism or anxiety. For many, it means developing a more realistic relationship with their own capabilities and time requirements. The solution isn't typically found in better alarms or stricter schedules, but in deeper self-awareness and emotional understanding. When people understand why they're late, they can begin to work with their natural tendencies rather than fighting against them. Perhaps the most important insight about chronic lateness is that it reveals the complexity and vulnerability of human psychology. Everyone has areas where their best intentions don't align with their actions, where their inner world creates challenges in the outer world. For some people, this shows up as lateness. For others, it might be difficulty with organization, decision-making, or emotional regulation. The specific manifestation matters less than the underlying truth. We're all trying to navigate the gap between who we want to be and how our psychology actually works. Understanding chronic lateness as a psychological phenomenon rather than a moral failing opens the door to more effective solutions and more compassionate relationships. It allows us to address the root causes rather than just the symptoms, and to support each other in becoming more aligned between our intentions and our actions. Ultimately, the psychology of chronic lateness invites us to examine our own relationships with time, pressure, expectations, and self-awareness. Whether we struggle with punctuality ourselves or love someone who does, there's an opportunity to develop greater understanding of the complex factors that influence human behavior. Time will always be finite, but our capacity for understanding ourselves and each other can continue to grow. In that understanding lies the possibility for change, growth, and more authentic connections with both ourselves and the people we care about. The story of lateness is really a story about being human, about the beautiful, complicated, sometimes frustrating ways we navigate the world with our emotions, hopes, fears, and dreams all influencing how we move through each day. And in that very human struggle, there's both challenge and profound possibility for growth.